way back to the Prophet Muhammad himself, who lived in the 7th century, and who really warned his followers against worshipping him. He was just a messenger. He didn't pretend to be divine. The point was for people to worship God or Allah.
Well, it's been kicking off in Batley. Let's take a look.
Break it down!
So after a few weeks of dead cattery and misrepresentation of certain protests, parents of children of a school up north have been going out of their minds slightly.
Well, I had various messages from parents, from various group leaders and some members of our team last night who were really distraught, upset, confused, disappointed, hurt about the messages. And they were that confused, they didn't know how to respond, and they asked us to respond, and so we did.
Over a teacher showing an image of Muhammad to a predominantly Muslim class in a town with a predominantly Muslim population.
The teachers have breached the position of trust and failed their duty of safeguarding.
Now, I'm not going to defend the outrage and the online abuse and the threats that this teacher has been receiving recently after his actions.
The situation was hijacked by Muslims from across West Yorkshire. There is unity here in their anger of a satirical cartoon depicting the Prophet Muhammad as a terrorist being shown to students at Batley Grammar School.
Nor am I going to defend this teacher's right to freedom of speech.
That teacher simply tried to teach a bunch of 13-year-olds in his class about Prophet Muhammad cartoons and Carlie Hebdo and the issues be related to religious freedom and religious faith and blasphemy laws and the right of freedom of speech.
As freedom of speech is not a thing without owning the consequences.
Fuck Sam Allinger! You're so fucked! When it comes to Sarah, you're gonna be the best
And my guess is he knowingly knew it would offend and cause outrage.
We have seen that the teacher has been in question, has been suspended, and there's been an apology from the headmaster. However, we've not had an apology from the teacher, which speaks volumes.
Regardless of his justification of showing these kids what an example of blasphemy is.
Let's use me as an example. My belief that children should be taught, young people should be taught about blasphemy using examples.
As this took place in a constituency where only 5 years ago, its MP was murdered by a white supremacist. Now, typically on the socials, the outrage and abuse has become quite threatening and censorious.
Because of the murderous terror attacks undertaken in the name of Islam by fanatics, madmen and murderers. And that's why these stories depress me, because they'll be used to drive another wedge between us.
And completely unnecessary. And has invoked fears and images like and a reminder to what happened to a teacher in France just 6 months ago.
Certainly what we saw in October in Paris with Samuel Paty, the teacher who did exactly, as we can gather, exactly the same as this teacher, who then found himself a week later beheaded.
Where similarly he showed an image of the Prophet Muhammad and was later beheaded by a Muslim extremist. Now, this image has featured in a satirical magazine, Carlie Hebdo, a few years ago, which led to the offices of said magazine being attacked.
Terror in the heart of Paris.
By an extremist group, where many people lost their lives.
By the time they'd stopped, at least 12 people were dead. Many others were seriously injured.
Clearly not considered a joke or taken lightly by some Muslims.
Oh, shit.
Just as some of our zealot royalists were upset when the Queen was caricatured recently in the very same magazine.
And we saw what they did when they caricatured Her Majesty the Queen only a few weeks ago
in an offensive way. And there was some on the right who were criticising the magazine for that.
As I said, I'm not here to defend the local Muslims or the online abuse that's been taking place.
We should not be hurting, abusing people and hiding behind freedom of speech.
I do, however, have some sympathy for the actual parents of those kids at the school who have their concerns or may have their concerns about the teacher's true intentions.
The context was there was a cartoon shown of the Prophet, peace be upon him, with a bomb on his turban, and I think the teacher was trying to make an example of teaching blasphemy and ridiculous way of teaching a subject by insulting 2 billion Muslims around the world.
Where it seems the teacher's hiding behind the ambiguity of his justifications rather than own the offence it's caused.
It was completely unacceptable that teachers should not be able to expose pupils to challenging or controversial issues.
But I do not endorse their hyperbolic calls to sack this teacher or banish him.
And this community leader said the school's head teacher is responsible and the Muslim teachers in this school are shameless.
Not saying that it won't happen in this case though, but it shouldn't be down to the outrage solely.
But there's a fear protesters may not rest until he's permanently removed.
As most of the outrage that has been demonstrated is mainly about the blasphemy
of a satirical cartoon depicting the Prophet Muhammad as a terrorist being shown to students at Batley Grammar School, an image which is deeply offensive.
Of the picture rather than the depiction of racial stereotypes. An Arab with a turban with a bomb strapped to it, which is much as the same as the depictions of Jews are.
There's been a comment made against the LGBT group or anti-Semitic group, and quite rightly so, I must add. The teacher would have been, and it's happened before, people have lost their jobs. So why are we why are we treating the Muslims differently?
Lazy and purposely offensive. So was this picture of Muhammad. Can you imagine showing to a Catholic an image of a black Jesus?
No.
Anyway, in my opinion, strongly held beliefs on religious lines are absurd anyway.
For people who don't believe in God, there is no such thing as blasphemy. So I'm afraid it stays in quotes until you demonstrate the existence of God to me.
So not overtly concerned with the real life impacts of the showing of these images to adults with spiritual beliefs, as they are their beliefs and they can stay in their feelings if they like.
How can you not believe in God?
Which one?
What do you mean?
Well, Zeus.
Who?
But those parents might have some real concerns about how that teacher or the institutions may really feel about their kids being authentically British.
Well, there are people in this country on this debate who want Muslims to be silenced. They somehow don't want us to practice our faith. They have an issue with our halal meat. They have an issue with the hijab or burqa, people wearing that. They have an issue the way we practice our faith and the way we interact with wider society. And then they tell us that, we don't respect freedom of speech.
Or how it may affect how those kids end up feeling about themselves.
Terrorist! Terrorize this.
Because much of the reaction from many of the other areas in the UK and a recent online petition to come to the teacher's defence.
A petition supporting the RE teacher set up by a pupil at the school has already surpassed tens of thousands of signatures.
Like I said, I'm not here to defend this teacher's right to freedom of speech.
He should be able to teach whatever he wants.
Because from what I've seen and read, it seems the only purpose of showing this image was to cause offence to the class or be fallacious.
I hope it's to be addressed. And, we should not be hurting, abusing people and hiding behind freedom of speech.
But my real issue comes with the fact that there's this fake support now for this teacher through this petition that over 60,000 people apparently have signed not to sack him. Just as the Muslim community's outrage should not have no direct impacts on the investigation into this teacher's intentions, neither should the fake outrage now being shown at this teacher's lack of free speech impact on the investigation either.
Some might call it opposition, some people might call it hypocrisy.
As the media instruments and their certain financial backers who are now stoking the outrage for the defence of the teacher's freedom of speech.
That teachers should not be able to expose pupils to challenging or controversial issues. Well, that was
where the very same media who back in the summer were demonising teachers for wanting to go back to school or not wanting to go back to schools because they felt it was unsafe.
2 million kids not getting any classes that are meaningful at all. Wouldn't that money be better spent on frankly, kicking the backsides of some head teachers and teachers at some schools and making sure they do the job they're already being paid to do?
Well, schools are doing a great job.
No, they're not. No, they're not. 2 million, no.
Or the numerous amounts of pay disputes and teachers going on strike that have been vilified over the years.
Teachers will walk out today and say sorry for the trouble caused.
I want to apologise to parents for the impact of the strike, but to say the cuts that are coming, the increase in class size, the reduction in subject choice is much more damaging to their children than one day off school.
But now your typical patriot types have got their knickers in a twist over the perceived infringement or the blasphemy of national purity. You know, Islam and stuff. Just like when Asian men groom young white women.
Children are being killed.
Yes, we all know what's been happening.
Yes, I would. I would stop.
You would ban all Muslims.
I would temporarily halt Muslim immigration to this country until we get a grip of the problem.
But somehow it's overlooked the fact that the biggest perpetrator of sexual offences towards children is white Anglo-Saxon males.
100 verses in this book that incite violence and murder against us.
Show some damn respect for people's religious beliefs, right?
Where's he at then? But very little concern is shown when them same teachers' livelihoods and mental health is under attack through this sociopathic political classes' preference for asset stripping.
From Jamaica to Japan, from Malaysia to Mexico, from Sri Lanka to Singapore, privatisation is on the move.
Of the very institutions that we've considered to be at the centre of the values of this country.
In 2019, more of the NHS was sold to private firms than ever before.
Like the NHS, the welfare state, and free and equal education.
NUT hopes industrial action will tackle underfunding across education.
But that will all be ignored, as many of the indigenous people of this country will do exactly like the zealots at the school gates are doing now when it comes to their response to the perceived blasphemy of national purity. So they'll become less likely to be concerned by our government's very real reduction of our civil rights over their right to hang up pictures worshipping Churchill, never questioning the efficacy of empire, while hoisting Union Jacks above our heads, while screaming Rule Britannia in a euphoric lobotomised haze of national pride and unity.
I'm going on a march, cause I want Britain to be back British. I want Britain to be back British. Got interracial law, and the Muslimic infidel. They're trying to get their law over our country. And it's happening. It's happening in other countries. It's happening in every country. It's like you got Muslimic rape.
Break it down!